Assalamu alaikum. What is up, my learners? I hope you all are doing well. In this video I will talk about the new research about COVID-19, and I was literally overwhelmed when I was reading this research. First of all, let me give you a brief overview about this article. Scientists have really come up with a new observation about COVID-19, that they can now literally pass the blood-brain barrier. The virus can pass the blood-brain barrier and it can enter the brain and cause brain fogging. I was kind of terrified by reading this, to be honest. Most of you guys who don't know what blood-brain barrier is, we also call it triple B or BBB. Triple B is basically, the purpose of this is to protect our brain from circulating toxins or pathogens. But now, unfortunately, COVID-19 can cross blood-brain barrier. So let's jump right into it. Okay, more and more evidence is coming out that people with COVID-19 are suffering from cognitive effects such as brain fog and fatigue. Cognitive effects means the thinking patterns are affected. So it causes brain fog and fatigue. Brain fog means that you cannot focus and your memory is kind of affected and stuff like that. That is called brain fog. And researchers are discovering why. The SARS-CoV-2 virus, like many viruses before it, is bad news for the brain. Okay. In a study published December 16 in Nature Neuroscience, researchers found that the spike protein, often depicted as the red arms of the virus, there they are. These are as you can see, the red spots here. These are the spike proteins of COVID-19. Often depicted as the red arms of the virus, can cross the BBB in mice. This strongly suggests that SARS-CoV-2, the cause of COVID-19, can enter the brain. The spike protein, often called the S1 protein, dictates which cell the virus can enter. Usually the virus does the same thing as its binding proteins, said corresponding author William A. Banks. Banks said binding protein like S1 usually by themselves cause damage as they detach from the virus and cause inflammation. The S1 protein likely caused the brain to release cytokines and inflammatory products. Okay, so what it does, that the proteins get attached to the blood-brain barrier or brain, and it releases cytokines from the brain, and which causes inflammation. In science circles, the intense inflammation caused by the COVID-19 infection is called a cytokine storm. Okay, so the inflammation which is caused by the coronavirus in the brain is called a cytokine storm in a scientific manner. The immune system, upon seeing the virus and its proteins, overreacts in its attempt to kill the invading virus. The infected person is left with a brain fog, fatigue, and other cognitive issues. So when the cytokine storm is caused, our immune system, when it sees the virus and its proteins, overreacts and releases some antibodies, and the result is the brain fog or the fatigue and other cognitive issues. Banks and his team saw this reaction with the HIV virus and wanted to see if the same was happening with the SARS-CoV-2. Banks said the S1 protein in SARS-CoV-2 and the GP120 protein in HIV function similarly. Okay, so the protein in the coronavirus and the protein in the HIV function the same. They are glycoproteins, proteins that have a lot of sugars on them. Hallmarks of protein that bind to other receptors. Both these proteins function as the arms and hand for the viruses by grabbing onto the other receptors. Both cross the blood-brain barrier, and S1, like GP, is likely toxic to brain tissues. As the HIV is toxic to brain, the SARS-CoV-2 is also toxic to brain. So there is a lot of similarity between the two proteins. The study explains many of the complications from COVID-19. We know that when you have the COVID infection, you have trouble breathing, and that's because there is infection in your lung. That we already know. But an additional explanation is that the virus enters the respiratory centers of the brain and causes problems there as well, said Banks. Raber said in their experiment, transport of S1 was faster in the olfactory bulb and the kidney of the males than females. This observation might relate to the increased susceptibility of men to more severe COVID-19 outcomes. Alright, so this is also a very interesting part of the article. Scientists have done experiments in which they found that the S1 protein, which is found in the coronavirus, was able to travel faster in the olfactory bulb, which is a part of the brain responsible for the sense of smell, and kidney of males than females. So it means that men are more likely susceptible to coronavirus than female. As for people taking the virus lightly, Banks has a message. You do not want to mess with this virus, he said. Clearly, many of the effects that the COVID virus has could be accentuated or perpetuated or even caused by virus getting in the brain, and those effects could last for a very long time. This study was partially supported by a National Institute on Aging funded COVID-19 supplement to a shared RF1 grants of Banks and Raber. So guys, this was about it. And as you guys can see that this virus is getting quite dangerous. At least the research say that. I urge all of you to stay at your homes and act more responsibly. And also don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get the more latest informations on different topics, and please like this video if you find this video helpful. Until next video, I'll see you soon. Take care.